Cinema 4D natively has the ability to fracture an object, but it can get a little time consuming if you want to have a bunch of pieces and you just want to get those individual pieces out. The way you would go about doing this is basically if you have an object like this cube here and you want to cut it with the plane that you see here, then you would use a boolean for this. So you just place the plane in and then the cube below that. And then if you were to right click and make it a current state to object, and if I just disable this, if you were to look at the geometry of the cube here, you can see that we've cut out the plane. We've cut through our cube with the plane. But there's all these different pieces that if you want to go through and actually delete all these so that you can just have the individual piece, then it would take a lot of time, and there's some errors that are going on here. So it's just kind of a little time consuming, a little difficult to get everything right. You can see that you just kind of got to keep deleting. It doesn't exactly work the best. So one way that we can get around having to do this and do a better job of this is by using Houdini. So I've just set up a Boolean fracture here, and it's essentially doing the same thing, but we have a lot more control over it. So as you can see, I basically just have the same setup, and then if I want to change the piece, or I only want that specific piece we've cut out, I can get it. Or if I want a different piece, I just change the piece number here, and I can get each individual piece, and there's only 4 pieces, so if I do 4, it's gonna get rid of everything. So you can go through and quickly get out each individual piece that you want without having to mess around with any other deleting of anything or anything like that. And you see, if I make a current state to object and I go in and I look at the geometry here, you can see that it is cut it perfectly based on the geometry of our plane and our cube, which is exactly what we want. So this can be extremely useful for modeling and just getting some different looks, especially with hard surface details, or if you want to do some weird environment type stuff, you can do that. I'll go over that in a different video on how I use essentially the same technique to generate some different environment pieces. So let's go ahead and show you how to build this inside of Houdini. So let's go ahead and drop in a geometry node. It's a very simple setup. I'm just going to name this Boolean fracture. Like I said, it's a very simple setup. Doesn't take very long to do at all. We'll just need a geometry merge node, or sorry, an object merge node. And we'll need a second one of those. And then we will need our Boolean fracture. This is going to drive our Boolean. So nothing's going to happen here. You can't really see what's going on. If I were to drop in a cube and a plane, you'd see basically what we were doing in Cinema. So just trust me that this is how it's going to work. And then from there, we just need a blast node, and this is going to allow us to get out the individual pieces without having to go through and delete everything. And then I'm just going to throw a null at the bottom, wire that up, and this is just going to serve as our output node. Now all we have to do is wire up make our null as the visible object, and we're essentially done here. So we just need to make our parameter interface. So go back to the Boolean fracture node that we've created here, go to edit parameter interface, and then we want to deselect, or basically minimize and hide, all of these folders here. So just select them all, go to invisible, and now we're just going to create our own folder, and let's just name this settings. Now we can dive into the Boolean fracture, and then I'm going to select the first object merge, and then just drag up our object, and we're just going to call this our main geometry, and then I'll just make that as the name as well. And then our second object merge, we need to do the same thing, and we'll call this our cutter geometry. And place that in there. And then I'm just going to use a separator just for easy use here. And then I'm going to go to our blast node, and I'm going to drag the group over. Now, important thing that if you note, or if you saw in our HDA here, our finished one, I have the name set to this because the group we have to, if we jump back into Houdini, let's just click apply and accept. If you look at the group here, we can actually, if I go back, if I look at the group without, actually I'm going to have to put in a, let's put in a box and a grid just so I can illustrate to you what's going on here. So now if we go to our blast node, we can see we have at piece 0, at piece 1, and when I go back into here and I put this in, it says at name equals piece 0. So that's the group name that's created for each individual piece. So the more pieces you have, the more obviously pieces that you'll have to change the name of, you can, however many there are. And then to remember that, I just made it simple and then made the name a little reminder to what you have to put into there, because no one's probably going to remember you have to put at name equals piece 0 as the group name to just off of their top of their head. I know I didn't remember that's what it was actually being called. So let's go ahead, let's jump back into our parameter interface, and let's go to our group. We'll go to what did I name that? Piece to keep, that's right. So we'll put piece to keep, and then our at name equals piece number. Just as a little reminder to make sure that we don't ever forget what we need to do to input into the group number or into the group name to keep the specific piece that we want. And then our blast will just keep this delete non-selected, add that into there, and then that's essentially all we have to do. So now we have all the settings that we need inside here. Let's just make sure that we're all good. Yep, deleted everything. And then we can go and right click and create a digital asset. And then all you have to do is just go through that process, and then you have this Boolean fracture that we have here. It's super simple to set up and super easy and useful to use this technique. I use it a lot inside of Houdini when I'm doing different sort of modeling things. It can be a very useful way to get around some limitations. And then if you want to just do your modeling inside of Cinema 4D, because it's a more traditional setup, then this can be extremely useful as well. So you can do all sorts of things with this. You can change up the geometry, any sort of look that you want, as long as you place it correctly inside of your object. So if I pull these out, if I were to move this over and move it up, it would cut exactly where we have all of these pieces going. So just make sure that you have it cutting all the way through your geometry, and then you have it also exactly where you want it with your main geometry, and you should be all good. So hopefully this helped you out. I got a bunch more Houdini tutorials and Houdini tips to make different HDAs for Cinema 4D that you can check out on my channel. Be in the playlist that this video has as well. So thank you guys for watching, and have a good day.